Okay, we're here in the new year. Our
Yes.
first podcast of 2015.
2015.
So, topic, what are we going to start with today?
Well, over the holidays, there's a lot of table talk.
Mm-hmm.
And so they came across, I was visiting some friends, and just in general, there's been a table talk at my house as well for many years about favorites. Like, people have favorite child. Some people have a favorite parent.
Yeah.
Maybe a favorite sibling if you have more than one sibling.
Yeah.
So I thought it was very interesting because I was with friends the other day for visiting, and they have kids, and they mentioned that they had a favorite, and of course the friends favored their younger child, and I watched them interact with their kids, and I just assumed. To me, the reason why a parent would favor a younger child coming out is because the child is more dependent on them.
Yeah,
But they said that no, their temperament is different, their personality is different, they're a little sweeter, and I still think also the older child has a little bit more independence, so they're a little bit more pushback.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. They're trying to find their identity as well.
That's true.
But I also believe that it fluctuates. Like sometimes you may have a favorite kid for different reasons.
Yeah.
And so I brought it to like my parents, and my parents always, and I do believe that my parents, like, they say they don't have a favorite.
Yeah, but do you think they would say it if they did?
Right. Most parents probably wouldn't say it if they did. And, I mean, decent parents, any decent
parent.
Well, not
to their kids.
Right.
They say to somebody else.
Right. And any decent parent would never say to their kids.
Mm-hmm. Well, my father told me I was his favorite.
But then there's favorite based on sex, because the friends that I visited, they both had the same sex kid.
Yeah.
So that's also a little interesting as well, because it's not like, I could see where you could favor a son because, he relates to you in a certain situation and something.
And a girl because...
Right, and vice versa. A mother might favor a son even so, too, because the son is more sensitive to his mother. There's all different reasons.
But I think, like, it's harder to gauge when you only have two kids of different sex. Because, like you said, you attach to them because of their sex in different ways.
Right.
But I think it comes into play when you have lots of siblings.
Right.
Like my mom has, like, 7 or 8 brothers and sisters and, a lot of girls.
Yeah, my mother has a lot of parents.
Yeah, and so now, families are smaller, but I think back in the day when you had a lot of kids, I think it's only natural. And I think the favoritism thing just stems from who you get along with the best.
Yeah.
Who may be the most like you. And I think it goes opposite. Either who's the most like you, or sometimes you knock heads with the person who's most like you.
Right.
Like this kid is just like me, and that's why we can't get along. But on the flip side of that, I've heard, what's her name, not to bring them up as, a example of a good family.
I know exactly where you're going.
The Kardashians.
Yeah.
I think that Kris said that Kim was her favorite.
Yeah, she says she makes no bounds about it in front of her kids.
So, and they know it, they accept it, it is what it is, So, I mean, I guess if everybody's cool with it and I think
Kim is her first, too.
No, Kourtney's the oldest.
Okay, yeah, Kourtney is the oldest, you're right.
I don't think Kourtney gives a fuck.
Yeah,
she
doesn't.
Because she seems like
she's like, I don't even want to be your favorite.
Yeah, she don't give a fuck about none of this.
Right.
Khloe might feel some kind of way, but I think Khloe feels like an outsider because she don't look like the rest of them.
Right. And then top of that, Kim's a favorite.
And Kim's a favorite. It's I could see in that situation, and I think Rob really feels out on the limb because he's the only boy, and like she really just doesn't fuck with him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but not to segue into that nonsense. But I think it's only natural that you would be, and I, hate to bring a personal thing. My father I only have one brother. My father told me I was his favorite.
Right.
But I think it's, part of it's the girl thing. Like I'm his little girl. Mm-hmm. And I think we're just very similar. We have similar personalities.
Right. And he likes that about
we get each other. We have the same kind of jokes. Like we look alike. So I think it's a personality thing.
Right.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with it as long as you don't show favoritism.
Right. I think that's another thing too, showing favoritism. But do you think that you have kids, I'm sure, have a favorite parent? I mean, I had never thought about it either. But when I brought that up, because kids are always bringing it up.
Yeah.
And at the table with my family, I was saying to my aunt, to her father, we had dinner with them last night.
Yeah.
I was like, well, it seems like she would be your favorite to her father, to my aunt's father. And he was like, no. I'm like, well, you guys roll together because that's all I see. Yeah. And I say, I can see the dynamics. He goes, so my aunt was like, well, I'm the only one that wants to roll. It's not even that, everybody has like a lot of things going on. Yeah. So they are their schedules. So it seems like, and then she had said her oldest brother, she feels it's her father's favorite. So it's very interesting on how you may see the dynamics of someone else and their parent and their child on the outside. And, and I think everyone feels like they're not to a certain degree, especially because my aunt has a lot of siblings, she probably feels I'm the last to be the favorite because she's the baby.
Yeah, but that goes both ways because a lot of times the baby is a favorite
right.
because they're the
right.
baby.
Right.
You know, it's that special attachment. And then I think it's also, too, who gives you the most grief.
Right.
You know, who's the easier child to raise.
Yeah.
You know, who never gives you problems, who's more reciprocal, who gives back. You know, who's, you know, like I think it's just so many different factors. But I think I think it's just natural to favor to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think my theory on it, because I was like, well, do you have a favorite parent? And I was like, I never thought about having a favorite parent, but I know I have certain things in common. And to me, I think I gravitate to my mother when it's, you know, certain things that, you know, I know she'll be her personality, and then vice versa. And I think that with kids, I think parents who don't have favorites like certain kids for certain things. Yeah. My mother will probably go to my brother for a certain thing because she knows, well, Steve is not going to give me a whole, like, he's going to be more willing to do it.
Yeah.
And, you know, give her I might give her a little like, oh, you know, and then vice versa, she may be able to come to me on some other things. So my brother's like, nah, I'm not, you know, I'm not available. Or I know my brother's always late. And I'm always in time. So I think my mother probably will go to me to be like, okay, if she's setting her day out to go somewhere to the mall, she knows I'm going to be up and ready. Yeah. Where Steve's got to go eat. Yeah. He sleeps a little late. Like, he'll do it for you, but it's like kind of on his own time, right? So I think there are differences to...
The difference of that, but that's interesting about, do you have a favorite parent? I mean, that's hard because I guess parents fulfill different roles.
Right.
And it's almost like, how do you compare them? Because, you know, like your mother is in a traditional... environment. Because of course there's always exceptions to the rule, but your mother's probably more nurturing. You know what I'm saying? You know, being that, you know, she nurtured you.
Right.
You know, maybe she cooks for you and she does domestic things and that brings you closer to her in some aspects. But maybe your father is the person you turn to for money or for advice.
To fix a car or some advice.
So it's like different types of different things you get from them. So I don't know that I could say that I have a favorite. I just think that it's just because, and it's so different because it's the sexes. Like, I mean, you know, with my mom, you know, that's my girl. Like, with friends.
Me too.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, like, of course I could talk to her about more stuff than I could talk to my father because it's just, I wouldn't talk to my father. Well, I wouldn't talk to my mother about sex either. But I could talk about girly stuff with my mom. Can't do it with my father. But on the flip side, I'd feel more comfortable telling my father certain things that maybe I did that I'm not proud of.
Right.
Like some ratchet shit.
That's so interesting.
Because my father's a little ratchet.
Oh, okay.
So, like, you know, I'll tell him, like, I did such and such. Right. And he'll, like, laugh. Like, yeah, I did that shit, too.
Right.
Whereas I tell my mom, she might be like, you know, that's not right. You wouldn't want nobody to do that to you. And then you feel judgment.
Right.
My father he'll find it funny.
Right.
So that's why I might be inclined
to he'll have a similar situation that maybe
so two of us just laugh over, like, we ain't shit.
My mother thinks I favor my father. I don't favor anyone though, but I will always pick up the phone to call my mother more because I tell my mother transfer all the information that I tell her to my father. I don't ever remember telling my like, even when I call for the house, she's the one who's always go, you want to talk to your dad? Yeah. So she's almost forcing him on me. Not that I don't want to talk to him, but I can tell her to tell hi to him and have no qualms.
And he doesn't feel no way about it.
And I don't feel a need to actually physically speak to him on the phone. Yeah. So, and by that example, you would think that she would think that I favored her. Yeah. Because I'm always calling to talk to her and I never go where, you know, I just...
But you know what? I think that in the normal, healthy situation, I think everybody favors their mother.
Right.
Boys, too.
Right.
Because I think girls, it's the whole woman-to-woman thing, unless you have issues.
Right.
And but boys, they always attached to their moms. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like, they may turn to their father for, like, you know, advice on certain things. And some men are really close to their father. It's a beautiful thing. Right. But I think most guys, like most men I know,
they're going to be
adore their mothers.
Uh-huh.
You know, my brother tells my mother everything. Things that I'm like, really? You go... Like, he tells her my mom more stuff than I tell her. Like, I talk to her about his sex life. And, I mean, that's... But that's how close they are. You know what I'm saying? So it's just... I think that it's just that the mother is the end-all, be-all. Yeah. You know, for a lot of people. Yeah. So it kind of makes sense to me.
So on to another topic. I thought it was very interesting.
All right.
I was at the table again, a lot of holiday talk, and they were talking about like fidelity. Oh, and this is a little interesting thing because the old school, I was around more. You know, I'm very close to my parents and their friends, so I get to hear conversation about like back and how they view marriage. We know like relationships are the same. Yeah. And we know people cheat no matter what age they are. Yes, so we were talking about like the Tim Tebow guy and people that decide to save sex for marriage. Mm-hmm. And my father thought it was ridiculous. When I say ridiculous, we had a 30-minute, even 40-minute conversation to the point where everybody's looking like he's out of his mind. Because he doesn't believe that anybody in this day and age who live in the United States can abstain from sex. If they're saying that they're abstaining from sex, they're lying on some level. And we were like, no, it's a majority and it's hard. We're trying to explain to him like it's hard and it's very rare, but there are people that really do. He goes, and he thinks, well, if you're a virgin, it's going to be impossible for you to find another virgin. I'm like, no. And we're trying to explain to him, like, people have the same mindset, will gravitate to each other. They'll go to, like, certain, like, outings and certain things.
Like, young Christian stuff. Yeah.
And he's like, no. And then, of course, he went to the biblical, if Adam couldn't do it, then no man could do it. And then he said something, God said, blessed is, there was a passage in the Bible that says, blessed are those who can abstain in the name of my thing. And he goes, what he's saying is God is saying, it's hard, bless you 10 times. Because he said something, because he said something about a eunuch, meaning someone that's not sexually, there's no sexual excitement, right? So he's saying, if he's even saying in the Bible that it's very hard and blessed are those few who can do this for me. And I'm like, well then
there you have it.
Yeah, so all you need to say is blessed. He's like, no, something's got to be wrong with them. And we're like, something wrong with them how? He goes, their sex drive, they either they have no sex drive, or it's very low, or they're just their body parts don't work.
I think that there are those people who like you said, maybe have a low sex drive. But is he talking about people who've never had sex, or people who have had sex but just
people who have never had sex like and decided,
I think a virgin, it's easier for a virgin to abstain because you don't know what you're missing.
Right.
And I think there's a fear factor too. Like if you never had sex before, you might want to, but you're fearful because it's like the longer you wait, the more mystery it is, the more fearful you are to try it.
And the more facts you probably have about like just what's going on in the world today.
Like that DNA shit we heard.
Right.
We'll talk about that later. But the longer you wait, the harder it is to do it because now you're scared and you really, if you waited this long, you're like, you really want to wait for the right person. Like I didn't wait. I'm not a virgin for 24 years to give it up to some dude at the bar.
Right.
So it's like you have all this other stuff going on with you. It's easier because you don't know what you're missing.
Right.
But then, then there are people who have sex and then go into like this new what do they call it? They abstain, maybe they're saving themselves for marriage or they holding off for, like, what's her name did that, the girl Tia Tamara, one of the
yes
she wasn't a virgin, but she decided that she wasn't going to have sex.
Right.
Her husband dated, her fiance at the time dated for like years and didn't have sex until they got married.
Right.
People do that and it works. So I think it's, they're the exception and not the rule, but they exist.
Yeah, we were trying to beat it over his head that it's a small minority in this age because he's saying the only people that could do that are religious people like the Muslims in like Saudi Arabia and all that stuff like that. And I'm like, and that's the same thing my aunt's father was saying. He goes, there are people that break the rules there that we think that.
Look at the Catholic Church.
Yeah. We brought all that up. I'm like, it's rare. It's not impossible. Yeah. And he goes, well, you don't know. I said, yeah, we don't know. There are people that may be out there lying. But there are people that we were trying to explain to him that if they were brought up in such a strict Christian background or whatever religion they're in that's so strict that says you need to abstain, if that's a heavy influence on them, they will make sure that and they can
guide their behavior,
and they can still govern in the world. And it may be a little harder, but then they'll try and stay away from certain things that they know that's going to lead them down that path where they're more tempted. Because he's like, well, they have urges, and it's true. You still have the feeling if you're attracted to someone, or if you decide you're dating but you don't want to have sex, you're kissing someone.
Yeah, but it's also about, like you said, avoiding certain situations.
Right.
A friend of mine is involved in a church, and I don't know what denomination. I'm not really sure on that, but I know it's a church where they have like a young, I don't want to say young, like a singles ministry, and those people are encouraged to only date other people in the ministry, because they all subscribe to the same principles, which makes sense. Some people are like, oh, that sounds cult-like, whatever, but I get the premise. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we've all learning the same thing, we all coming from the same school of thought, then I don't have to convince you to do X, Y, and Z because you're already on board.
Right.
So she's a part of this ministry, and they were saying certain things like, A, don't date somebody. I think it was, don't date somebody outside of this. And B, when you date people, they have like these different like guidelines, like don't sit in a car with somebody and talk for hours. Don't, like, say, I'm making this next one up, like, say, don't go back to the person's house or whatever, because they know those type of behaviors lead to
you're
sexual
human.
interest and sexual awareness, because you are human. And you sit in a car with somebody that you're attracted to for hours on end, one thing leads to another. That's natural. So just avoid the whole situation. Only go on dates outside to someplace, no coming back to nobody's house. And that stuff will help you kind of stay on the path. So I definitely think think there are people out there who have some serious willpower. Yeah.
And that's what we were saying too. There's some people are just, and he's saying there's something wrong with them, and then they say, what makes it seem like there's something wrong with you? Like, because we're living, people are sexual, and we're very sexual people. And if he can't do it, and like the majority can't do it, what makes you? And I'm like, it just, and we were like, it just shows that they have their certain, I made an example, there's some people that can have talent, are talented for certain specific things. That they, you're not able to do, and with that talent, they kind of discipline themselves to kind of get better at it. The same thing. Like some people can abstain and they can discipline themselves to abstain.
But then they are weak in other areas. Right. You know what I'm saying? Exactly. So it's just like anything, like diet, it's exercise, or whatever it is that you do. Some people go hard in one category and they're able to do it, but maybe they're weak in other areas. Nobody's perfect, but you can be perfect in certain categories.
It was very disturbing. And then he went to my aunt's father, like, made an example of, just in general, about him when he was working, like he was in charge of somebody, like a department or something, and there was some attractive women there, and he was married at the time, and like he'd get advances, people make advances to him all the time, and abstain, and then it went into like that's also a talent, that's also a discipline, and so my father was like, that first he went into the thing like that's not natural either, and we were like, what? And he was like, well, what is the he goes, you're only doing it because maybe you were above them and you knew that you were jeopardizing. Right. Or you either weren't interested in them, you're above them, so that jeopardizes the job. First. And he goes, no, there were people that was on my level, in my years of working. And so he said, I just really believed, I was happy at home, and I really believed in being faithful to my wife. And until we divorced, obviously they divorced years later, at that time, that's what I believed. I believed in marriage. I was happy. And as much as those women were attractive, I really believed in that. And it was foreign. Yeah. And it was just weird because, and then I was like, that's another discipline, or sometimes people have a belief that that's how they live. Is it a very few? Sadly, yes.
But there are people out there who do think like that.
Of course, I realized how ratchet my father was at that because of the argument there. I was just like,
kind of, when you have that kind of mind frame, it opens up other doors. Like, well, if you think that's impossible, what else do you think is impossible?
So he was like, that's impossible, or that person also has something wrong with them, or they have a low sex drive, or they're not attracted to the person, or there are other things at stake. There are other things at stake that they don't want to lose in terms of their job. I'm like, how about your wife? Too, you know what I mean?
Yeah, some people.
It was just very interesting.
That leads me to something else. We're going to stop here. We're going to go into section 2, part 2.